Hello, people sitting at house are doing so. I'm going into the Department of Education again. I'm going to enlighten them a bit more. But yeah, so everybody's kind of looking very bad for them now because it just goes to show you how bad they've been treating their staff and how bad they've been treating people who work for the Department of Education. And it's really showing now. It's really showing now because I rang one person who I know who was a former teacher in this country. Went to Australia obviously with a lot of her friends too. Got a graduate degree, stayed a few months in this country, couldn't survive more or less. Couldn't, and that's the one reason, couldn't survive on the teacher's salary, on young teachers' salaries. And she said to go to Australia, 60 times more money, 50 times more money, better working hours, might as well. In the whole school, and I just need to say this to Miss McHugh, there's nearly 80 teachers. Out of our 200, there's nearly 80 teachers that are Irish, and young Irish teachers that left over the last 5 years. Now that looks very bad because that looks terrible. There's so many bright young teachers moving to Australia and not staying in Ireland, and that looks terrible. And now it's really showing because they can't do anything. The teachers' unions, the majority of the teachers' unions said it's not feasible to have social distancing in the classrooms in primary school and secondary schools. Like, explain this, Minister McHugh. I go to a secondary school. 800 students nearly. Good God, how are you going to set social distance my ass? Still as that. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that in the corridors? How are you going to enforce it? How are you going to do anything? Like I said with that, there's not enough teachers. There's a lack of teachers in the ETB in Cavan for secondary schools. There's no teachers in the county to any extra teachers at all. We can't get any. We can't have any extra classes because the resources are not there of the state. The classrooms are too small. In the majority of these secondary schools too. And there's not, and as I said, there's a staffing problem. So how are you going to cope with that? 800 students, other secondary schools in Cavan, some of them have 400, 500. How in the name of God? And there's in one or two secondary schools 100 for 500 students. How are you going to do? If that's feasible? How are you going to do anything? Especially in small primary schools. There's not enough room to separate people 100 miles away from each other. And it's just going to show you how badly managed the Department of Education. Because it really just goes to show now, and it really shows the Department of Health too. Because obviously a lot of young doctors, they didn't have enough staff, so they had to call it. Had to ask people who were tired and everything to come into work. And same with the Feds force. It's just really going to show you how bad it was run and everything. And I don't blame the teachers. I don't blame the teachers' unions or anything. I blame the Department of Education, Minister McHugh. And still, yeah, Pauline Tully, a TD for Cavan Mullen, she actually used to teach in my school. She said to the minister when she was in Dardown the other day about the LCA course. I'm in LCA, and first year in LCA, it's basically another way of doing the Leaving Cert. And you get points for going into school, right? You get points for doing assignments and things like that. How in the name of God? Like, there's ones who are doing the Leaving Cert who get them points, and it's kind of extra points for the Leaving Cert too, and it kind of goes towards the Leaving Cert. It's kind of, kind of watching you throughout the year. And he hasn't mentioned anything about that. Like, he's dragging these feet again and again and again. He's not, like, people who, like, honestly, it's not our fault that we can't go to school. So you should be awarded the credits, obviously, because it's not your fault for going into school and if you do assignments at home. Then, like I'm doing my assignments at home when I get the chats. So I couldn't care less. I might as well say it straight. I say that to Minister McHugh. If you want to take every point off me, for my Leaving Cert, that's totally fine. I have no problem. But I'm using my advice to give out fuck about just. So if you don't like it, you can love it. Because this country is free speech, and obviously I'm sure many people would agree with me. The trade unions would even agree with me. The teachers' unions would really agree with me. Because it was in February before the election. Now I remember this very straight, that they went out and strike. We had a day off. They went out and striked, and said they wanted better conditions for young teachers. And this is this is what came back to bite you in the arse. And this is what's showing the Department of Education how bad they are now. Because it just goes, like as I said, that school has 80 teachers that are from Ireland. From Ireland, out of 200 teachers. And this school is very small, there's only 400 students. There's not many students. And there's not really a big need for any teachers, because obviously, very high tech, because they have tablets and everything. It's mad. It's mad. So they don't really need many teachers because they learn really themselves really, because the teacher just says, look this up and find this at so and do it on your laptop, and it learns them how to do technology and the rest of that. And it's a brilliant idea, and they said they don't need any extra staff, and they said they're happy enough with 80 with that many teachers. Like I said, there's out of 280 teachers, so there's only 200 extra students, and that's a lot. And in this country you couldn't get that. If like that, my school has in total probably 100 and possibly 110 at most for nearly 800 students. So, Minister McHugh, please, by all means, try and find the reasons how. Yeah, and then special needs students, I don't even go on about people being left behind. People with dyslexia, autism, being left behind. They have to force to pay for SNAs. Like, there's no way in how you can wiggle yourself out of this. Like any way you go, Minister McHugh now. If you go footways, if you go backways, if you go sideways, if you go footways, there's no way of wiggling out of this. It's simple as that. It's not feasible to have social distancing in a school with God man. Even if you brought them in few hours, an hour a day, you couldn't do it. Simple as that. Couldn't be done. It's the size of them schools in Dublin. My God, 3,000 people in one school, 4,000. I know even if a secondary school has nearly 7,000 students. Like, how in the name of Christ and the Mary of Christ Almighty are you going to feasible to do that? How like I want to know how are you going to do it? Like there's no way in hell. And some of these schools don't even have, like as I said, staffing is the hugest problem because all the teachers are in Australia, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, you name it, they're all over everywhere else, and they had the right mind, because I say to the young teachers, and I said it even to one, I was good friends with a young teacher, a young woman teacher that left. She stayed a few months in Ireland. Couldn't afford. Don't know qualifications here for teaching. She couldn't afford it. So with that tax on her car and everything, she couldn't afford it. Like she said, she would have been homeless if she stayed any longer. That really showed you. She spent loads and loads of years studying for being a teacher. And she said this is not feasible. Simple time. She moved. She didn't want to leave her family. She didn't want to leave her friends. But she had to. If she didn't do it, she would have been left lying on the street. Like, as many members of the... And this is towards the Department of Defence, what I'm saying now. There's so many veterans of the Irish Defence Force you just left on the street. You just leave them on the street like they're nothing to them. And you won't acknowledge it either. But it's just common sense. Like, especially in these times of crisis, it shows up, how bad things are going, how bad things were going, in fact. Because before that I didn't realise. I knew it was bad, staffing obviously, but before I didn't realise how bad it was. Now I'm looking at it as very, very bad, because they can't go arseways, they can't go sideways, they can't go back, they can't go forward. They can't do, like, honestly, even the teachers' unions, all the teachers' unions are saying it's not feasible to do it. It's not feasible. They can't do it. There's no way in how you could do it. Unless you completely just up the budget completely on schools. But there's no way you could do it. There's literally, and I'm saying this, I looked at the schools, different plans for different schools. There's no way you can do it. There's simply no way. How can you do social distancing in a primary school, say, with 100 students? I know a few primary schools in Cavan, and I'm thinking, for example, how could you do it? How could you do it? Like, I know even myself of someone primary school for something back a year ago, and there's cabinets and there's places for them to put their toys in and everything like that. How can you, unless you take them out and you just fire them outside and leave them outside. But the only way you could do it is really just teach them outside. That's the only way you could do it. That's what one teachers' union said. It's somebody for the teachers' union. But I'm just seeing what the primary school teachers' union obviously saying it's not feasible. It's hopeless. It's more or less hopeless. And it's same with the secondary schools, because secondary schools have more, obviously. But the primary schools, it's really not much hope. And even for my old primary schools, it's not really much hope, because there's only 6 teachers, 7 teachers, 8. I think it's 8 now. I think it's only 8 teachers. It's one extra teacher, but for the amount of students, there's nearly, oh God, there could be nearly 100 students there now. And the classrooms are small, and the classrooms are old, and you couldn't do it. You honestly couldn't do it unless you took up everything and just fired it out the door. You just couldn't. You couldn't do it. Like, you honestly couldn't do it. So I just don't know. Like, it's the biggest, you really have to just look into this. And, people might say I'm bullying the Department of Education, which is kind of true, I am bullying them. But I'm just kind of showing them, look, it was eventually going to kick them up in the backside. This is really shown how bad it is. And I can see it now, how bad it was. And even that woman teacher would even tell you herself, she's getting 50 times more money. She's able to afford her own house, she's able to afford a car, a lovely new car. Doesn't have to pay much doesn't have to pay much insurance and everything on the car. Like, she was being robbed by the insurance companies in this country, because she was just a young driver, and obviously things like that, she was being robbed. They took advantage of her, obviously. And obviously in Australia, they treat her equal, and they are obviously the government are a lot more nicer to them over there than they are over here, because they treat you like a prisoner if you pay your tax over here. They just wanting to give you anything for free. And then the people who cause trouble, they get a pat in the back and well done, give them €50 a week. Yeah, that's the way this country runs, and this is the way this society's going. But it's just logic. Like, anybody who can't see this, have a look. Even ask your young teachers. Like, I know so many young teachers who, even in Ireland at the moment, it's very, very difficult for them. It's very, very difficult for them. Because, there could be a teacher that's there 100 years nearly. Some teachers could be there 50 years and they get massive amounts of money. And then the young teacher who's doing her best, or he's doing his best, they get really just tuppence. That's really all they get. And it doesn't help with obviously the insurance, and obviously when they're young, you don't have to pay off a mortgage and everything like that. Older teachers generally don't really have to care about them things. Because obviously they have the money to buy off the house and the rest of that crack. I'm sure people get what I'm saying, but it's just the Department of Education can't go anywhere. So does that. Bye.